All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's presentation. My name is Ashley Rumschlag, and I am the CEO and president of Sheri's Fund and domesticshelters.org. We are joined today by Rachel Myers, our senior digital services specialist, and Hannah Craig, our vice president of content. We are so excited today to be hearing from a fantastic group of experts to discuss technology abuse. And we are so grateful for our partnership with OhanaLink Purple to make today's presentation possible. OhanaLink Purple is a safe, secure mobile solution connecting domestic violence agencies and victims of domestic violence. OhanaLink Technologies, a woman-owned technology development company based in Pennsylvania, is leading the way in bridging the gap and providing secure communication channels for domestic violence victims and community-based agencies that offer services to victims. As reported, domestic violence incidents have increased over the last 2 years, and the COVID-19 pandemic spotlighted the challenges facing domestic violence victims and shed light on the need for improved, safe communication tools between victims and domestic violence agencies. Witnessing the immense need, Lizette Olson, executive director of Mercer County Aware, a domestic violence agency, approached OhanaLink Technologies to inquire if its existing technology platform could help domestic violence agencies overcome this challenge. In the fall of 2020, OhanaLink Technology set out on its mission by collaborating with Aware in 6 additional domestic violence programs in Western Pennsylvania to create a solution designed to enhance communication, connectivity, and support. OhanaLink Purple, a first-in-the-market cloud-based delivery system for better communication, coordination and communication for agencies, victims, and family members, was born from this labor of love. A true game changer best describes OhanaLink Purple, as it enhanced domestic violence agencies' delivery of services by providing them with the tools to safely improve communication and expand secure access to resources for victims. OhanaLink Purple is delivered through a secure cloud-based delivery system developed with proprietary traceless safety features that can be used on smartphones or tablets to provide a safe, private mobile communication and support tool. To learn more about OhanaLink Purple, go to ohanalink.com/purple. And then just a few housekeeping items before we get started. Just so you know, there are live closed captionings available. And if you're not seeing them and you'd like to, or vice versa, you're seeing them and you'd like to turn them off, simply go to the More option in your toolbar, click Show Subtitles, or to turn them off, just do the opposite. And then just a reminder, this is a Zoom webinar, so all attendees are in listen-only mode and your cameras are turned off. Please put your questions for our panelists today in the Q&A box, and then the chat can be used to communicate between other attendees and let us know if there's any issues with the presentation, and we'll do our best to address them as quickly as possible. And then we will email you a certificate of attendance, a transcript, and then a webinar playback recording, along with any additional resources mentioned throughout today's chat. And we'll send those via email to you within 1 week. And if you are a call-in listener, please, skip ahead a little bit here, just email us at info@domesticshelters.org. We'll have that on the screen here later. And then next up, we have a webinar coming up next month on November 10th, same time, so 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. It is a 90-minute webinar to talk about the solutions to common hotline challenges, and that is with our friends at helplinesoftware.com. And then finally, we are so excited about our new website. We just can't simply stop talking about it. I'm going to share a short video tutorial about the new website. It's about 2 minutes long, and it just gives you a sense of what we were thinking with the redesign, what we were hoping to accomplish, and point out some new features that we think you all will be very excited about. So let me go ahead and cue that up right now.
Hi, this is Hannah, VP of Content at domesticshelters.org. I'm really excited to share more about the new look and feel of domesticshelters.org with you today. It was crucial to us to make sure we're getting important information in front of those who need it as quickly and as easily as possible. Sometimes those experiencing abuse only have a few minutes to find what they need, so our new design is focused on facilitating those moments as smoothly as we can. Safety and security is crucial when someone is in an unsafe situation, so we've made the look of domestic shelters far more discreet. If you need to leave the page quickly, the Exit Site button will take you to a weather page and clear domesticshelters.org from your screen. You can also hit the Escape button on your keyboard twice. One of our biggest tools is our Find Help search. This searchable database of domestic violence programs and shelters makes it easy for someone to find a local advocate to connect with for support. You can always find help from every page on our new site, from the main focus of our homepage to a search field at the bottom of every page. How the Find Help searchable database works hasn't changed. It's just easier to navigate than ever before. You can enter your zip code or city to find domestic violence programs and shelters near you. With the filter option, you can easily narrow down your results by a range of needs like languages, services available, and who the program or shelter serves. We're committed to making sure it's simple to find whatever someone needs wherever they are on their journey. That's why we've improved our site navigation to focus on 3 important areas for those experiencing abuse: identifying abuse and learning more about domestic violence, getting help including safety planning and escaping abuse, and healing to work towards a safer, happier life. Each category's drop-down menu shows some of our most useful resources tailored to each step of the journey. You can also go to a feed page for each category to explore more content like articles, comprehensive guides, videos, and more. New to domesticshelters.org is our Domestic Violence Professionals Hub. We understand that by supporting those who are helping victims and survivors, we have the opportunity to exponentially increase awareness, education, and resource availability. That's why our new DV Professionals Hub makes it easier than before to find our free trainings, claim and manage locations in our searchable database, and access other powerful tools and resources. The DV Professionals Hub also features a curated feed of content to highlight information useful to domestic violence advocates. We're so excited about this new iteration of domesticshelters.org, but we're also always committed to getting better. If you have any questions, suggestions, or feedback for us, please reach out to info@domesticshelters.org.
All right, and with that, let's go ahead and dive in today. So we have an excellent panel of 4 different professionals who have varying expertise areas when it comes to technology abuse. Sheri Kurdakul is the founder and CEO of EBinRA Inc. and VictimsVoice is the technology that she operates. And then Kara Wasser is the CEO of OhanaLink Technologies, which you heard a little bit about that before with OhanaLink Purple. Adam Dodge is the founder of EndTAB, so End Technology and Technology Abuse. And Hilary Donnell is the head of corporate social responsibility and public affairs at the technology company Aura. Welcome, everyone. I'm so pleased to have you all here today and really looking forward to our conversation.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let me get my screen organized here. Got some questions here. I do want to kind of start off with, I didn't do, in-depth introductions to everyone, but because I want to give everyone a chance to kind of, from their perspective, share a little bit about your experience in the field of technology, and how, and what, what kind of lens you bring to this conversation. So maybe tell a little bit about the work that you do and your experience with technology. So Adam, if you don't mind, do you mind starting us off?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much for having me. What an awesome turnout. So I guess I should start by saying that I am not a tech expert. I don't come from the tech world. I come from the victim services world. So I'm really feeling where everybody's saying they're coming from in the chats. And I worked for a domestic violence nonprofit for 10 years and became really sort of frustrated by my inability to address and prevent the ways in which my clients are being harmed online and via technology. And when I set out looking for professional development training for non-tech experts that work with gender-based violence victims, it didn't exist. So I set about creating the solution that I needed in that moment. And now I spend my time providing trainings and presentations to community-based organizations and universities and other organizations, really any that touch the lives of a victim, to ensure that their physical safety, their digital safety is preserved in the same way that we focus on and preserve the physical safety of clients. So that's my jam. I'm really all about making sure that we prioritize digital safety in the same way we prioritize physical safety, and really put the message out that you do not have to be an expert to help keep victims safe in the digital age. So that's a little bit about me.
I appreciate that, Adam. I think that's such an important kind of framework for what this conversation is going to be about. When we were kind of had a pre-webinar chat the other day, and really what we landed on was this idea that we want to make sure that we're talking to, we're talking in a language and talking about things that aren't, framing it as this is something that you can't possibly do unless you have a master's degree in computer science. So yeah, thank you for bringing that lens to the table. Kara, do you mind introducing yourself next?
Sure, thank you. My name is Kara Wasser. I'm the founder and CEO of OhanaLink Technologies. Earlier this year, we launched OhanaLink Purple, which is a secure private support and service delivery solution, enabling agencies and victim service providers to safely and even secretly communicate and provide access, resources and services through the utilization of technology. And so it was developed in collaboration with 7 agencies, which was really important for us to, we are tech people. And so getting the input from service providers was really important for us to understand the needs of the market. And so some of the barriers which we considered and addressed were, phone calls being traced, and we can get into all of these challenges throughout this call, but, really identifying what those challenges were that were keeping clients from connecting with them through the utilization of technology, and how could we work together to create a solution that would enable clients to safely access services. And so that's what we accomplished together. I'm really proud of the solution and looking forward to talking about it a little bit more here today.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Kara. And what I didn't mention earlier, obviously I mentioned a little bit about OhanaLink Purple at the beginning. So thankful for OhanaLink for supporting this webinar today. And just so everyone knows, Kara will be sticking around after our 90-minute mark just to kind of share a little bit more about Purple, OhanaLink Purple, with anyone that has more questions. So just want to give a heads up on that. I forgot to mention that in the introduction. But Hilary, do you mind sharing a little bit about yourself next?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm Hilary Donnell. I am the head of corporate social responsibility and public affairs at OhRA. OhRA is a consumer online safety company that helps protect families from identity theft and fraud. We have an all-in-one digital safety product that includes everything a family might need to stay safe online. Everything from a password manager, parental controls, VPN, antivirus, dark web, and credit monitoring. And we are here today because our company's mission is to create a safer internet for everybody. And as part of that, we are committed to helping to protect communities that are at higher than average risk of cybercrime, including survivors of domestic abuse. So we've been working with domestic shelters to provide resources and education to survivors, as well as to ensure that as our product evolves, we are introducing new features that take into account the voices and experiences of survivors.
Yeah, thanks, Hilary. And I love that you're here for this conversation today, because we met probably a year and a half ago and started this journey. And you probably would have never volunteered to be on this panel to talk about domestic violence and technology abuse, but it's been great to be able to introduce domestic violence information to you so that you can really translate that into the technology side of things. And I think you've become this really important voice in this conversation. So thank you so much for being here today. And let's last but certainly not least, Sheri Kurdakul with EBinRA and VictimsVoice. Do you mind introducing yourself and telling a little bit more your background?
Sure. Thank you so much, first of all, for having me here, and congratulations on the new website. I'm really excited. So I am the CEO of VictimsVoice, and I come from, I'm not a coder. I've worked in technology space for a while, but always on more on the marketing side. But what I bring to this is I am a survivor. I'm a survivor of childhood sexual assault and child abuse. I'm a survivor of years of domestic violence as an adult. But I also like to say that I'm a survivor of criminal court, civil court, and multiple family courts. And really, Victims Voice was to bring or be able to bring a legal voice for victims. We use that word very intentionally because we're talking about people who are currently being victimized. And I really struggled with documenting safely, and even years and years of documentation, and having a mother who was a paralegal. I documented all the wrong things, and I documented them in all the wrong ways, and none of it was legally admissible. So that's really what Victims Voice does. It helps them collect all the details in a way that actually meets legal admissibility as evidence in court, so that victim advocates can help survivors get protective orders, and those that choose to use the legal system can do so with evidence in hand. So thank you again for having me.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you all for being here today. So I wanted to start off this conversation. I think we'll probably keep this pretty high level in terms of what technology abuse is, just because it's such a big word. It's a big term. And I mean, there's so many different aspects of it. So what I'd love to start off with is if we go around probably the same order as we did before, and just talk about what have you seen of examples of technology abuse, maybe a loose definition that you use to define what you think, what you see technology abuse being, because in order to have, any kind of deeper conversation, we kind of have to define, okay, well, what is technology abuse? What is this all about? So Adam, do you mind starting us off again and just talking about, what your definition is, and maybe some examples of how you've seen it manifest in the real world?
Sure. Yeah. For me, I guess I always say that I call it tech facilitated abuse. And I always emphasize that it's way more about the abuse than it is about the tech. But the way I define it is how familiar forms of abuse are perpetrated online and via technology and via devices. And so things like power and control, harassment, intimidation, familiar to those who are on today's webinar, forms of abuse that we're very well versed in, right? And so it's really how these familiar forms of abuse are carried out online. And even though that they're familiar, it's important to recognize that when abuse goes digital, it does tend to become amplified. It allows people to carry out acts of harm or exert power and control over somebody in an amplified way that may reduce the likelihood that they'll be held accountable for their actions, while also allowing them to reach out and harm somebody even after they've left an unhealthy or abusive relationship. So we see things like non-consensual tracking, or accessing accounts and devices without consent, impersonation, and I guess the last thing I'll mention is people love to overstate. People who engage in harmful or abusive behaviors love to overstate their tech abilities as a means to really put fear into the minds of a victim or survivor that all their technology is unsafe and this person can really get at them anywhere, anytime. And as we'll probably get into later, that's fundamentally untrue. But really, it's about how familiar forms of abuse are carried out online and via devices.
Very good. That's a fantastic definition. I think, really highlights this idea that it's certainly its own form of abuse, but it doesn't necessarily have a brand new tactics. It's just essentially the same old story, same old kind of tactics that everyone's been using, but they're leveraging this new world of technology to carry it out, right? Is essentially kind of where you see technology abuse.
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame you if you don't believe me, because if you look at things like, non-consensual deepfake pornography, or, harassment in virtual reality, it looks like something out of, depending on your generation, a Twilight Zone episode or a Black Mirror episode, right? But when you strip those things away, it's still stalking behavior. It's still, intimidation or power dynamics at play in these virtual spaces, or impersonation or things like that, or image-based abuse and things like that. The internet didn't invent these forms of abuse; they've just amplified and magnified them. And that's where it can feel very intimidating to wade into a survivor's online life or their technology to try to help them. But we really need to meet them where they are, because most of the folks that we're serving are online and on their devices most of the day. I mean, it's usually the first thing I do when I wake up is look at my phone. So
yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Thanks for that, Adam.
Sure.
Kara, we'll continue on. And do you mind kind of the same question? What is your definition? What examples of technology abuse do you see in the world?
Yeah, so I don't know that I'm technically qualified to define what that is. However, I look at the things that are being utilized to amplify isolation, to amplify these things that Adam referenced, the tracking and the monitoring and continuing to isolate somebody because you're not wanting them to make these phone calls, or you're not wanting them to do certain things. And so I think what my experience is with the methods of which they're abusing, but through the technology. So the tracking, the isolation, the watching their data, or maybe not even turning data on, and in different ways that they can amplify, like the things that Adam identified as abuse.
Yeah. Thank you, Kara. And Hilary, what about you? I know a lot of what you're probably going to say is stuff that we've chatted about, and we've done, a lot of calls together to talk about the concerns that we have for the technology that you use. So maybe framing it in terms of, what are some of the things that Aura recognizes are potential risks for people using the technology, and what your thoughts are on how to combat that.
Sure. So obviously technology-based abuse can take many forms, several of which my fellow panelists have already addressed. But one type of tech-enabled abuse that we're trying to combat here at Aura is financial abuse. Something like 99% of survivors of domestic abuse have reported forms of financial abuse. And, anybody is at risk of identity theft or fraud, but the risk is significantly higher for those in abusive relationships, because I think when most of us picture a hacker or a cyber criminal, you're probably thinking of a hooded figure sitting in front of a laptop in someone's basement on the other side of the world. But for this community, that person is their partner, and they already have all of the information they need to assert control and intimidate them, and oftentimes prevent them from leaving, because they can use that information, like a social security number, a birthday, information that most of us share with our partners willingly, to open a line of credit in their partner's name and run up that credit and prevent them from accessing, a new apartment, or accessing their own credit. They might close credit cards that their partner opens. They might empty shared bank accounts. And while this is troublesome for anybody, for a survivor of abuse, it's especially so. Something like 85% of survivors have said that the reason why they returned to their abuser was because of financial difficulty. So it's really important to kind of do everything you can to separate both your financial and your digital life from those abusers when it's safe to do so. But I think perhaps even more scary is that tools that were created to keep people safe can also be used in a way they weren't intended to track and intimidate and stalk partners. So I know Ashley and I have talked about a specific example where an abuser opened an account in a identity theft prevention tool without his partner's knowledge or permission. And, through something like that, that partner can access whenever they've applied for a mortgage, every time their credit is run for a new apartment, they can see when they change their address with the bank. So it can kind of give them the information that victim or survivor is trying so hard to protect and keep safe. So I think it's twofold. It's both financial abuse made possible by technology, as well as kind of what Adam was talking about, control and intimidation through tools that were created to keep people safe.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And the piece that really sticks out to me is something that, I know we've talked about many occasions, and everyone here has thought about, is just this idea that the abuser isn't that shadowy figure on the internet somewhere, in some basement, some far off country. It's the person that they, love, or you used to feel those feelings of love towards. And they know everything. They know your first pet's name. They know the first car that you bought. They know your mom's maiden name, all these different things. So, there is that level of complexity when it comes to addressing online safety and security, because, the information that you would not willingly give to a stranger, you willingly give to the person that has intent, to harm you. So, thanks for reminding and bringing that to the conversation. Sheri, do you mind going next and sharing, kind of some of the similar sentiments of what is technology abuse from your framework, and how do you see it manifest itself?
I just want to touch on what Hilary was saying. Having lived a lot of those experiences, it is very isolating, and it is very hard to break away from the abuse when those financial technology tools, and they're becoming more and more prevalent. We're becoming less and less of a cash society. It's going to become harder for people. And so I think everything that Hilary touched on is so important. I think for me, the thing that I wanted to talk about was, I own a tech company, right? So you think that I'm thinking about the people that are hacking into phones and stuff like that. But really, what we look for are those subtleties, those breadcrumbs that people use or leave behind. Adam used a term that I just love, and that's technology facilitated abuse. And I think that's really important. Technological or technology facilitated abuse can be very isolating, because more and more our world is centered around technology, integration, connectivity, and almost if you're not online, then you're alone. You have no way to communicate with people. And so oftentimes we hear, well, you just need to close down your accounts, or don't go on social. Well, that's an unrealistic expectation. You can't expect people to just not go on social. But I think there are ways that you can be careful about how you communicate on social. If you're going on a trip, post pictures after you've been on the trip, not at the airport when you're getting ready to fly out, because now you're alerting everyone as to where you are and potentially where you're going. Make sure that when you're taking pictures or you're in a large group, if you don't want to be in pictures, you're going to have to be really careful. If you are trying to escape an abusive situation where privacy is really important to you, then there's going to have to be some level of due diligence, because around social, around communication, around the way that you talk to people and share information can give the abuser a whole lot of ammunition against you, in where you are, what you're doing, who you're doing it with, and potentially use that as ammunition for future abuse down the road. So, again, take away unrealistic expectation to tell people just get off social, shut down your accounts. That's unrealistic. So how can we better teach, and maybe, through some of Adam's programs, how can we teach people to be safer about that communication online? How can we be better about setting up the privacy modes, or even knowing what privacy modes are on our devices, so that we're not automatically sharing information, or even, pop-ups, alerts when you have your phone laying on the table. a lot of times that just gives somebody information that you inadvertently didn't know that you were giving them, just by the sheer fact of them seeing who's texting you, right? Or who's giving you notifications. So for me, it's those subtle things, and some of the things that we've even baked into our technology to ensure that we don't inadvertently alert the abuser to what's going on. Yeah.
No, I think that's a really, really great point, and something I'd actually like to explore more with the group is, what you kind of laid out there are, I don't want to call them common sense, because I feel like no one was born with a smartphone in their hand where it's just like, oh, of course I would do this or this, but just those kind of really basic tech things that maybe your specific organization is trying to combat, but you want to make sure that everyone knows about. So I'll kind of leave it open to the group to add more to that thread of what Sheri was talking about. What are some really just common sense ideas of things that advocates can share in terms of advice with the people they serve?
I think one of the, when I was doing a cyber security panel, and I did some pre-panel research and was looking at what kind of training is out there now, and where are people really feeling like they're lacking. And there's a lot of organizations out there, the National Network to End Domestic Violence has tech safety, but tech safety gives high-level information. They don't actually teach you how to go in and protect your notifications, to set up the safety features on your phone, to look at how your wireless is connected. They don't actually get into, and I'm picking on them, but I'm just saying in general, a lot of these organizations, while they tell you to do these things, they don't tell you how to do those things. And I'll venture, go ahead and put in the chat, how many of you, and just by saying yes, how many of you feel like you could teach someone how to properly change their settings on their computer or their phone? If you feel like you can, type yes in the chat. And I bet we're going to get quite a few no's.
Yeah.
So that would be the first thing is, there are so many free resources out there. Wired Magazine does a great job at giving granular information about how to set up a lot of those settings on your phone. So I would start there.
Well, that's fantastic. Thanks for that. I'm going to jot down Wired Magazine, and we'll include a link to that in the shared resources as well.
Yeah, to piggyback, I could not be feeling what Sheri's saying more. This difference between general advice and actionable advice, right? People will be, well, just change your passwords or just turn off your location settings. And it's like, yeah, it's so easy, right? Like, where do I start? How do I do that? Like, which count should I narrow down first? It's not super easy, right? And one of the things I've learned from my work and working with advocates in the field and being an advocate in the field is we don't feel super confident with the tech stuff, as Sheri was getting at, I think, with her question in the chat, or to everybody in the chat. So overcoming sort of the intimidation around technology is really important, and remembering, and I think it was Hilary that said, the people that are doing this are not, to clients in the overwhelming majority of circumstances, are not tech experts, right? Because they don't have to be, because they have all the access and inside information and opportunity that is just basically fallen into their lap. So for me, some of the advice that I will give folks that is sort of easy, like one really big one is multiple devices can be logged into your accounts at a single given time, right? So and in relationships, healthy or unhealthy or otherwise, it's very common to log in on each other's devices, share passwords, do these things. But, to give you an example with Instagram, how many of you ever log out of Instagram? Like when you actually go into the settings and log out? I would wager none of us do it, right? We just close the app, which is convenient and fine, but it's it's the convenience where people find opportunities to misuse the tech to cause harm. So if I log in on my partner's device, check my Instagram and close it, well, now I've just left the door open for that person to get into my Instagram account whenever they want. And I probably forget that they had that access pretty quickly, right? Because I'm not thinking about that. And there are ways that we can verify really with any social media app or really email. You can actually see who is logged into your accounts at any given time. You can verify whether there are other devices logged into your accounts under the login activity in the settings. So these are things that, like, in my vision of visions for our field, is that we're very comfortable being like, oh yeah, let's just check, let's go to myactivity.google.com and see if anybody else is logged in to your your email, your Google accounts or your Gmail, because guess what, if they're logged into Google, they can see where you're going via maps, they can see what websites you're visiting, and they can look at your emails. So we don't want that, right? And this, I don't think anything that I just said used acronyms or techie speak that went over anybody's head. This is all stuff that we can do. We just need to be aware that we can do it, and how to do it, which is just do an internet search, check login activity on Instagram, and then it'll take you right there on how to do it. This stuff is very attainable. So that's that's one that I always focus on, is how to verify unauthorized account access, because it's generally something we don't do, but something we absolutely should, because if our digital safety is compromised, then our physical safety is compromised. And a lot of survivors aren't thinking about changing their passwords when they're fleeing an abusive incident. But for advocates in the field, we need to start exposing them to that need, so that they do, because the worst thing that to happen is, like, somebody enters a confidential address program and then they order food on DoorDash and their partner still has access, and then so they've just completely blown up the confidential address program, right? And so it's these little things that the more we do it, the more comfortable we get, the more we can be more tech forward in our work, and it's a much closer, it's much closer than I think we realize. I'm going to stop talking now. I just get very excited about this stuff.
I really appreciate it. And I think what I'm formulating in my head is this resource that I don't think exists, but maybe there's some piecemeal of it all over the internet, and we can maybe toss out other places for people to look, is just, isn't there, does there need to be some sort of just checklist that is available for people to say, okay, here's how to protect yourself? And like you said, making sure, going to this link and making sure that, any account that you have is only logged in on your devices, or logging out, and, all those different kind of very practical things. Is there any kind of list that exists, or do we need to start creating this right now and getting it out to the masses?
Well, if you create that list, it's going to be different in about probably 10 days as companies do.
That's so true. Yeah.
And so it's definitely a moving target, which makes it challenging.
Yeah, no, I get that for sure.
I just wanted to add that, from the iOS perspective, the majority of mobile users are iOS users. And, a lot of iOS users share an Apple ID with their significant other. I've been an Apple user since day one. My husband and I have the same Apple ID, which maybe is outdated now. But if I miss a phone call, it also goes to his device. And so these are things that I actually don't see unless I'm seeing his device. And so those are other things that, need to be brought to the forefront of exposure, making sure that that if you're sharing an Apple ID, what they actually have access to. And so that is just another way to track and see what you're up to.
Yeah, it seems like there's these overarching logins that people need to be aware of, like Google.
Right.
If I go into, if I'm logged in on one of my Google accounts, and then I want to log into some other website, and they're like, would you like to log in with Google? And I say yes. Once you it's like that one password has so much power. So, making clients aware of the risk that they have with doing that, and with Apple ID as well. And I think it's really important to reiterate, I think this was kind of shared as well across the board, is just that, we're really what and Sheri kind of drove this point home, is it's unrealistic to expect people not to use technology. And I think that that's kind of a sentiment that we hear over and over again, of people just turn off your phone and, go live underground and don't engage with the community. But, it goes back to that isolation technique that is so powerful and so pervasive when it comes to abusive technology. So, I think that this conversation is really bringing to light this idea of, okay, it's not realistic to just shut off your phone and go off the grid. But there are some practical things that you can do. Anything else to add to that vein of things in terms of just specific practical things that you've, either personally done or that you like to share with victims and survivors?
I work remotely, our whole team does. And so I have a home office. And because of the sensitive nature of our data, every single time I walk away from my computer, I lock screen it. I don't just walk away, even if I have to go to the bathroom really bad. I take a few seconds and lock screen my computer. I lock screen my devices. And if I'm going to be gone for more than getting a glass of water or going to the bathroom, I lock the door. If you are in a shared space, lock your screen, because even a few seconds of somebody walking by your computer can, again, if you have your email up, they can see all your emails. If you have your social media up, they can see, who you're talking with, who your friends are. They can just walk by and snap a picture of your screen and get a whole lot of information. So anytime you're not in front of your devices, lock screen them and make sure that those passcodes are not shared passcodes. I just can't stress that enough. And if you work in spaces where, coffee shops or whatever, they make HIPAA compliant screen covers for laptops, for phones. I'm sitting in a co-working space right now. My computer is turned, and when you walk past this room, you cannot see anything on my screen. It's kind of like a banker screen because of this quick stick cover that's on my computer that makes it impossible to see what's on my screen unless I'm looking straight at it. So even if you're in a home where you've got a lot of people around, just get one of those screens, or get them for your device, get them for your computers, and not have people walk by and kind of look at what you're doing.
And we had a question come up in the chat, a really great one. You talked about locking your screen, but what exactly does that mean? Is that how do you actually lock your screen?
So I'm an Apple person, and if you mouse up to the Apple in the top left corner, there's towards the bottom, it says lock screen. And what it does is just bring you to that screen where you have to put in a password to get back in. For your phone, it's generally just, if you've got your phone off and you have it on, yes, that's my daughter, you just click it off, and then when you touch it again, it's going to prompt you to log back in. Androids are pretty much the same way. You have to use a thumbprint or you have to use a code to get in, but just shut the phone down, and then you have to have that password to get back in. I'm not sure how a PC works, so any of you who have PCs can jump in.
No, are we all Mac users here? I think it's just as simple as kind of logging off. I know it's similar on an Apple too, where you can kind of have different user profiles as well. But those kind of higher level ideas of what to do oh, here we go. Press Windows button. Oh, everyone knows this. Way to go. Everyone's on it. Control-Alt-Delete, and it will bring up task managers to lock. So that's one option. And the sleep option as well. So thank you everyone in the chat. Fantastic. Hilary, I wanted to give you some space to kind of chat about that. I don't want to put you on the spot, but I want to make sure that if there's anything that, even personally, just things that come to mind when it comes to protecting, very practical and actionable things that people can do to protect their technology online. Is there anything else you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I think I have two suggestions. The first is, if you are looking for tools that are designed to help keep you safe, and that aren't created specifically for this community, look for the ones that have a human touch. Look for the ones that have taken extra steps to kind of understand different dynamics, especially abuse dynamics, and have made a concerted effort to address some of those things. So the example that I was talking about earlier, that woman had contacted the service that her spouse had created an account with, and they weren't very helpful in that situation, because the person who had opened the account was her spouse, and so she wasn't able to close the account. And they weren't, their team hadn't really been trained to understand what to do in that situation. So at Aura, for example, we are having ongoing conversations with your team to make sure that our product team is not creating tools that enable that abuse, but also to help our customer service team recognize when there's a special situation happening, and give them a specific protocol to follow that addresses that situation, so that if somebody does call in an abusive relationship, the answer isn't, well, your spouse created the account and there's nothing we can do. I think the other suggestion, which I realize may not always be possible, but as much as it is to carefully plan that escape to not just physical separation, but digital and financial separation as well. Several of my fellow panelists have already given some really great suggestions for how you can do that. I would also add creating a new email address that's completely separate from your account, your existing email account. I know when I'm on Chrome, I can toggle between all three of my Gmail addresses. You don't want to be able to do that. Getting a new phone number on a pay-as-you-go phone so that location tracking isn't possible. And looking into the FCC's Lifeline program, which can help provide financial assistance with new mobile devices. And then Sheri was kind of alluding to this, but not doing any of this on a Wi-Fi network that you share with your abuser. Go to an internet cafe with a privacy screen, go to the library, or use a free VPN service so that your browsing activity and your location is kept private. And then you can kind of use that new email address. You can use that new phone number as soon as you've left that abuser to change your account information, to update your passwords. Don't use passwords that you've used in the past. Don't use passwords that include your hometown or your high school mascot or your mother's maiden name or anything that a partner could potentially guess. And then I think the last thing is just, being aware that sometimes closing accounts or changing passwords to accounts that you share with an abuser can send off those alarm bells in their head and alert them to the fact that you're planning an escape, which could put you in further danger. Aura actually authored a piece on Domestic Shelters blog that includes a list of suggestions for how survivors can secure their digital and financial lives, both before and after leaving an abuser. And it also contains a link to a free trial and significant discount on Aura for anyone who is already experiencing identity theft and doesn't want to address it by themselves, and needs help kind of going through the legal process and all of that. And I think after hearing some of the things that everybody else has talked about, it would be great to put together like a comprehensive guide for both advocates and for survivors, with the people on this call today, to just address everything from digital and financial tips, but also some of the privacy settings that Adam was talking about, and other more kind of simple suggestions like privacy screens. So hopefully we can work together to put something together that's super comprehensive for this community.
Yeah, thank you. And one thing that you mentioned, trying to keep tech speak down as much as possible, but what is a VPN?
Thank you.
Yeah.
I live in a world where VPN is
exactly
now in my everyday language. It is a virtual private network. Actually, Apple has it on your phone now. They have a VPN offering that you can just turn on. It basically encrypts all of your online activity. So the sending of information, the receiving of information, it keeps your location private. A lot of people first started using VPN so that they could watch things in countries where they weren't permitted to do that. But it's also a really great way to secure your online activity, whether you're on a Wi-Fi network with an abuser or on a public Wi-Fi network that is usually, not as secure as a private one to begin with.
Awesome. Thanks for that background. And I'm making some notes here in our resource document. We'll include some more information about what a VPN is. And it sounds like there are some free resources out there. So we'll try to dig up some more practical tips about how people can take advantage of that. And I know, Sheri, you were kindly putting in some resources in the chat. You had mentioned DuckDuckGo as a preferred browser. And my understanding is that that's a browser that does not collect your private data or doesn't store it and sell it like Google or Bing would do. Is that a good description of what they do?
It's kind of like it's not a VPN, but it works so that it's like a what do you call that? A private browser, and they have a little flame at the bottom, so you can have a bunch of windows open and touch that flame, and it'll wipe all your history out. And the nice thing is that if you download the DuckDuckGo app on your phone and you search through that, it doesn't show up in your phone's history. So it almost keeps it contained in like a little bubble. And then when you wipe it out, it wipes it out completely. So it's not even in your history. We recommend that all the time. I know they also have a Chrome extension. It will limit some of your searches, and they will give you a warning that if you are using the Chrome extension for DuckDuckGo and you go to a YouTube video, YouTube is now tracking you, which is owned by Google. So you can search and see what the search results are, and that's safe. But once you come out of that and go into someone else's space, be it a website or whatever, every site has tracking materials on it of some sort. It's specialized applications that may or may not block that tracking, such as OhanaLink Purple, the VictimsVoice application, things like that.
Yeah. Awesome. And thanks, Adam, for typing in the VPN location on the iPhone. So appreciate everyone adding in those resources as we go along. I think one of the next kind of sections that I want to talk about is we've kind of alluded to this in different technologies, but what are some of the things that people should be looking for when they're trying to use a new technology? Kara, if you don't mind starting off on this one, because I know that that's really been on your mind a lot as you developed OhanaLink Purple, and what are some of the safeguards that you've put in place or what you've prioritized because of how they're important, and then how do those translate into how people should evaluate other technologies?
Yeah, so some of the things are very similar to what Sheri was saying with the tracking on the browsers and history. So when we built OhanaLink Purple, there is browsing within OhanaLink Purple, but it is secure under our wrapper. So any history or tracking is not available to anybody else that would pick up the device. So that is one thing that we put into place immediately. Another thing that we put into place was access through a secure ID code that is provided through a service provider, meaning that they don't have to create it, the user doesn't have to create an account using something that could be, a password that they typically use for everything, or an email address that could point back to something that would be interceptable. So access was given in a new way through a unique ID code. So it is not something that an abuser would potentially be able to guess. So it was that access through a disguised access point as well. So what we do is we, bridge that gap between victims that are seeking services to a service provider and enabling them to seek those services using the digital technology safely, securely, and in an undetectable manner. And so that's where our expertise is, and we've done that through this secure wrapper, through giving a unique ID code for access points, through the disguised access point being a fully functional application that even if an abuser does find it on their device, access to the service provider is undetectable. So we've put in quite a few secure underpinnings to the platform, as well as some of the end-to-end encryption things as well. We're looking at secure VPNs so that nothing is left out on a router. And so we're really taking this undetectable, leave no trace to the next level.
Thank you for that. And really want to pose the question to the entire group. What are some aspects of technology that should be examined before someone decides to log in for the first time or sign up for that account? What things should people be looking out for?
I think, when we first developed the very early versions of VictimsVoice, you think about how you can get it out to as many people as possible, right? Make it so that anybody can quickly find it. And the first thing we did was we developed applications for, the iTunes or the Apple Store and the Play Store for Android. And we developed a web-based application. No one downloaded the apps. And it became very apparent that, downloading and having an icon on your device, especially one that's identifiable with like a lock, or it says, the words are very clear as to what it is, can be very dangerous. And people think, okay, well, we'll hide, we'll skew the name and we'll make a cutesy little icon. But every Play Store, every iTunes, Apple Store, whatever, whether the app is paid or not, there is a financial trail. And I say that even with free apps, there's a receipt. You get a receipt. And think about what we were talking about before. If you have a shared account, now that other person is getting a receipt that you just downloaded something. And if they're like, what are they downloading? And they find out what it is, now you're in trouble. So think about who your audience is if you're thinking about developing technology or you're thinking about using technology for vulnerable populations. Is the way that they access it going to potentially put them into harm's way? And then how are you communicating with them? So many apps have now what's called two-factor authentication. Either you use like Google Authenticator, or you get a text message, or you get an email with a code. But that's a touch point, and that's potentially a very dangerous touch point that you're alerting someone that, hey, somebody is needing a code for something to get into something. So even having things like that is, two-factor authentication may be safer to get into the app, but it may be more dangerous for a victim who's being monitored, which is pretty much all victims. So ways around that. And then how does that person communicate with a company if they have an issue? What does that tech support look like? Or what does that customer support look like? Are they having to send you an email and you're sending them an email back? We have our corporate name is EBinRA, which is, doesn't really send out any bells or whistles, but if somebody looks us up, they're going to see VictimsVoice. Right? So being able to communicate in a way that's contained, that's not going to potentially alert an abuser that they're trying to get some kind of communication is really, really important. I know Kara, has taken care of that with OhanaLink. I know we have with VictimsVoice. And it's crucial when you're dealing with these vulnerable populations. I also think not having something to download increases access. Just last summer, we released our version that also helps navigate tribal jurisdiction and legal compliance in Native American tribal courts. A lot of those tribal communities are in very rural areas and don't necessarily have great Wi-Fi connection. They may have to go to internet cafe or a public library or a school to be able to access. So is your tool going to be available for just a limited number of people that have a smart device? Or are you going to utilize technology that I can't say everyone, but anyone could gain access to?
Yeah. Thanks for that. And really, I think I want to give Adam and Hilary a chance to answer that question in terms of any specific, things that when you're bringing on new technology into your life, or if you're working with someone, if there's any advice that you want to share. And then I want to move on to kind of the last 30 minutes, really talking about practical advice, because we're getting a lot of really great questions about specific items. So Adam or Hilary, anything to add to that conversation about practical specific things, more general checklists that you maybe have mentally when you're looking at new technology?
What I always say to anybody is just ask, how can this be misused to harm me or harm somebody, right? Like, just because we don't often ask that question, it's like, oh, this makes my life more convenient, but it's like, also, how could it be misused to harm me? How could, having Find My Phone or family sharing or Find My Friends turned on be misused to harm me, right? Well, I think we can all quickly come to a conclusion of how that happens, or how can using an AirTag or a personal tracker be misused to harm me? There's not a lot of friction in the decision making when we get new technology, but if you are working with somebody who is in an unsafe space or unsafe relationship or something like that, as advocates, that's a question we can ask ourselves. And you don't need to be a techie or tech savvy or a tech expert to go through that exercise. Oh, you have this personal tracker. Like, okay, does anybody else have access to your iCloud account or your phone, or and it's more about just having the conversation, and it's almost a thought exercise to get people to start thinking about, I know I'm a broken record on this, but thinking about their digital safety in the same way they think about their physical safety, because we prioritize our physical safety at a much higher degree, an intentional degree. And so asking that question is something that I encourage a lot of folks to do.
Yeah.
I would just add, building on something Adam said earlier, is really thinking about convenience. And if a tool seems to be making something much more convenient for you, then there's probably a reason for that. And really taking the time to look at how something is securing data, looking at their default privacy settings, and then doing some research on the company itself, like how are they generating their revenue? Are they selling your data to make money? If they have positive reviews, or if they've been the focus of investigations or consumer complaints, things like that. So really just taking a minute before you kind of choose convenience to do your due diligence.
Awesome. Well, I want to kick off. So we'll kind of transition into more of Q&A and really responding to what everyone here on the call wants to know. I think a lot of these questions are going to revolve around very specific solutions to specific problems. And we'll all do our best to answer those as we move through them. The first one, Adam, you mentioned you have kind of an answer to this, but is there a way to find hidden apps on your phone placed by perpetrators? Or is there a way... Yeah, so there's that question about hidden apps. Is there a way to find them?
Yeah, so I get this question a lot. And because victims of intimate partner violence are at high risk of the person seeking to harm them also having hands on their device, it's an opportunity for them to download things on the device and hide it from the victim. So I popped this in the chat, but the Coalition Against Stalkerware is a resource page entitled stopstalkerware.org, which is not a super common thing. I want to stress this. I don't want people to think, oh my gosh, stalkerware is everywhere, but we're starting to see it as an emerging issue, and it's got really great resources on how to find apps that have been placed on the device without a victim's knowledge and are hiding on the device. So for Android devices, it's called sideloading apps, where you can download apps outside the Google Play Store. And particularly if it's stalkerware, it's designed to hide in plain sight. So I would direct folks to that website if they're interested in Android. And then on Apple devices, there is actually a hidden folder where you can hide apps from the victim. So if everybody who has iPhones want to do this really quick, I can walk you through it in about 30 seconds. So if you open, tap settings on your iPhone and tap your Apple ID, your name at the top, and then tap media and purchases sort of down near the bottom, or middle, I should say, a little menu is going to come up. Tap view account. And it's going to ask for your password or do a Face ID or something like that. And then what I want you to do is scroll down till you see hidden purchases. So right there, it's like, what the what, Apple? Why? But anyway, that's another, right? But right there, that's where we should be checking to see if hidden app, one place we should be checking to see if a hidden app has been installed on the survivor's device, because you can install like a parental monitoring app or something else. The other really cool thing about this section is if you go back and tap purchase history, so go back to the account settings menu out of hidden purchases and tap purchase history, you can see every app that has been downloaded onto the survivor. Way too fast for me. I'll sorry, Kathleen. You can see every app that has been downloaded in the last 90 days, even if it's since been deleted, and you cannot edit this. So that is a really important thing to check, because there are other ways to hide and obscure apps that have been downloaded. Not here. You cannot delete. Parents love this, by the way, because they can see what apps their kids are downloading, even if they're deleting them. And then if you want to go back even further, you can go to the date range above and go beyond last 90 days and go into the last calendar year, the year before, and you really start getting a snapshot of whether or not this victim has had their own device weaponized against them. And the dual benefit is it also helps gives them a skill, right? That they can actually go in and check this in the future, and it gives them heightened awareness about their digital safety, right? Because we should know what apps have been downloaded on our device. These devices are on us every waking moment, right? So if somebody has put something on there that we don't want on there, or we didn't consent to, it should be sort of second, just a natural. We should have this in the ability to check this just on call, right? But we don't, because most of us weren't raised in a digital age, and this is not something we've been taught. But that's a really quick way to do that. And I think somebody had a question about Android devices, and I would direct you to the Stalkerworth site for information on how to check for that. And if I can find it while we're talking, I'll throw it in the chat as well.
Usually you can Google, how do I do this on an Android? And somebody will have step-by-step instructions on how to do that with the latest and greatest.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. And we'll obviously also recording this, so we'll be able to, anyone that was a little bit fast for or wants to be able to share it with other people, this section will be recorded, so you can play that back here.
And somebody put the steps that I went over in the chat too.
Way to
the
go.
iPhone, and I'm copying them and repasting them. It was shout out to Mackenzie for doing that.
Nice
I'll
job.
repaste them just so folks. Oh, that's the wrong thing. Well, I'll just write it in.
Oh, good. And I'm trying to collect as much as I can in the shared resources folder. I think that's going to be a really big takeaway from this webinar. Is we'll just jot everything down that came out on these practical tips. Fantastic. So let me go over to the Q&A document. And so when it comes to technology abuse, sometimes people think of the best solution, or really kind of any kind of technology abuse, but tied in specifically with stalking. Is it possible to change a social security number when dealing with these types of abuse? And when is it possible? And do you recommend it? What are things that people need to think about if they decide to take that drastic measure?
You can absolutely apply for a new social security number, and you can also apply for a new social security number for your children if you have them and you're concerned about their social being used. Kids are unfortunately, as you guys know, used as a way to control and intimidate as well. And it's not uncommon for someone to use their credit and run it up and ruin that as well. So you can absolutely apply for a new social with the IRS or the Social Security Office. I can send a link to where you can find information on how to go about doing that. But if you have experienced identity theft, if someone, whether it's your partner or not, has opened credit files or made charges on your behalf using your name and information, then it's a great way to make sure that your social security number doesn't continue to be abused.
Any considerations for that from the domestic violence perspective, that maybe, I just say this because there's something in my mind that's telling me that there's maybe some unknown consequences, or maybe it's not as easy as said than done. But hopefully it is, because it seems like it could potentially be a win to be able to kind of erase that part, that connection that the abuser has.
I've legally changed my name 4 times.
Okay, so it is that easy. Okay.
And I usually would wrap it in with situations that I was already in court. So, the criminal court, family court. It's not, it's not as simple as, oh, I just like to change my name. There, you have to go before a judge. There has to be valid reason. There's a lot of paperwork that goes with it. And your original data is always tied to your new identity. The IRS won't let go of that. And Social Security also, because if you're paying into Social Security, which if you're getting a paycheck, you're paying into Social Security, that always tracks. And there are organizations that will even issue you a temporary Social Security. The year I left my marriage, I got audited, and the IRS assigned me, because my name changed, assigned me a temporary Social Security number. And oh God, was that a mess to untangle. I actually had to ask for an audit to get it untangled, because they were sending me double refund checks, which don't deposit those, don't cash those, give those back. But yeah, it can create a real mess. So just think about, why is it that you feel the need to do that? If you can prove that they are taking money illegally from you, that there is identity theft, if you can show that, those are criminal charges. You can bring charges against them. And then you don't have to go through the mess of changing all your stuff. You get them charged with crimes instead.
Yeah. And just wanting to point out, someone mentioned in the chat that obviously changing your name and changing your Social Security number are 2 separate processes and 2 separate things. But thanks for pointing that out. Okay, so
there was one question in there, if you don't mind, I just
Please.
wanted to address. There was one about caring for elderly. I'm a caretaker for my mother, and she cannot use, she used to be able to use an Apple iPhone when there was what we call the belly button, right? That little home button. But they don't have those anymore. And for elderly people that don't see real well, they don't hear real well, yeah, the technology for hearing aids is great, but it opens the door also, them having technology that they don't know how to use. Now that technology has to reside in the hands of someone else. That opens them up to all kinds of potential financial abuse as well. So I would say, when you're caring with elderly, work with someone that can kind of be an oversight person, an audit person of their devices, of their finances. And it doesn't have to be the same person. I have several people, even though I'm my mother's POA, power of attorney, I still have other people that oversee what I do, so that there can never be any question of what's going on. Without that oversight, they are just so vulnerable.
yeah, thanks for that. So let's talk a little bit social media. I don't know that we've touched a whole lot on this, but someone kind of had this great question about, do you have any advice for victims that need to use social media for their business, on how to navigate personal safety and still be able to promote their business and not be trolled or followed or stalked or harassed?
So that's a great question, and I'm going to give you a not great answer. So but I'm going to give you some tools and some resources. So no, there is a cost with associated with being unable to make your social media accounts private, right? If you have to use those profiles for your business, then it leaves you open to harassment and monitoring and trolls and things like that. So I have two suggestions. One, I'll put in the chat right now. Pen.org, if you've never heard of pen.org, they are a journalistic organization, but they have an online harassment field manual. And if I can get the direct link, I'll send it to you because it's kind of hard to find on there. But basically what they did is they created this really great resource for doing exactly what you described, which is for journalists who have to have public facing social media pages and are getting harassed, right? And so how to de-escalate, how to utilize the features that social media platforms provide to us to address harassing behavior. And so there's a lot of similarities between a journalist and a domestic violence survivor or a stalking victim who relies on their social media profiles for their job. And so I have deferred to this a lot. And I guess the one thing I would say, so it's hard. It's not, you can't really eliminate the problem. You have to minimize it. But finally, social media platforms are starting to invest more in trust and safety and give us more tools. So a lot of people will say, well, what do people say to a victim who's getting harassed on social media by, a certain account? What's the first piece of advice they usually say? Rhetorical question, it's block them, right? Well, blocking them isn't always the best solution, because if I'm harassing somebody and they block me, I'm very unlikely to be like, oh, game's over. I guess I can never harass this person again. I've been blocked. Like, no, I can just create different accounts to continue to harass them. So instead of, you can actually have an unintended consequence of creating more problems when you block an individual. And it may be the right thing for people. People block all the time. But now we have other solutions, like you can mute other people so you don't have to hear what they're saying. Or if you're not comfortable not knowing what the muted person might be saying, like a specific threat, you can restrict. So that means it mutes it, but then it stores the content so you can always view it to see if that person is escalating or making specific threats. And then you can also filter content by keyword or by topic. So I don't want to hear about, misogynistic or racist or extremist or sexualized commentary coming through my feed or through my DMs or my comments. So you can filter all that out. So my point is, and thank you, Rachel, for putting in the chat, is we have evolved past blocking, and there is a lot, so there are a lot of great tools we need to acquaint ourselves with. But at the end of the day, if you're publicly facing, ask any celebrity, right? If you're publicly facing, like a good example of this is Sloane Stephens, who is an amazing American tennis player who is also Black. And she shared after every match, she gets just a litany of racist, violent, harassing messages, thousands of them, after she loses a tennis match that her white or male colleagues don't receive, right? But because she's a public figure, she is unfortunately exposed to those things. So there are absolutely things that we can do, but it's about minimizing and mitigating, not about eliminating.
Yeah. I would also just add that it's really hard to know, because each platform is different, and all the privacy settings are different on each platform. And taking the time to kind of look at each platform and each platform's privacy settings and how they're taking steps to combat some of this stuff will be helpful. But I guess more of like a point of reassurance is there's no, at least that I'm aware of, there's no one-stop shop that can help you do this in one simple place. And right now, our government is the US government is trying to figure out how to address this with a lot of these social media companies, because it is so different between each. So I think as we continue to see politicians who are making consumer privacy and kids' online safety a bigger issue, we'll probably see a lot more advocacy and a lot more solutions coming from our government that will require some of these platforms to take further steps or provide additional tools to kind of simplify some of this stuff.
Yeah.
I'd like to take a different perspective on that question. If you're an employer, why are you forcing your employees to participate in social media with their personal accounts? It's very easy now for companies to set up a company profile. And if you have a marketing department that is managing the social media, or you have a social media department, or you're just a very small 1 or 2 person social, nonprofit or whatever you are, you as a company should look inward. Is this being a responsible employer by making people use their personal accounts? And I know of several companies that do this by saying, well, if you're in sales, then you need to be on social and you need to be engaging in these groups and you need to be doing this. No, you don't. And that's irresponsible as a company. I say this as a business owner. Set up company profiles and have your marketing department, or if you're handling the marketing, then handle it from the company profile. Don't put people in dangerous positions, period.
Yeah, I think that's really important to think about. And what I'm saying in this conversation, there's so many different fields and tracks that we can go into. But yeah, another one is, how do you, as an employer, protect your employees from technology abuse? So,
and it is really hard to be an employer and walk that tightrope of how do you communicate with your employees when you know they are subjected to domestic violence. There is a legal tightrope and it is thin. So as employers, go out to your community, meet your local crisis shelters, call centers. If you are one of those organizations, reach out, go to chamber meetings, meet those companies out there and volunteer to do training seminars. We need to be talking about this in the workplace. We need to be talking about safety. We need to be talking about technology safety, workplace safety, financial safety, all that in companies. And we need to educate employers on how to do it right.
Yeah, it kind of stems into what's the Spider-Man quote, with great great power comes great responsibility. And I think that's kind of what we're doing all here, is everyone here has this great knowledge on technology abuse, and you're doing your part to share that with the wider audience. And as everyone on this call, as you learn more and you become more of an expert in this field and become more comfortable, it is really important that you share that with as many people as possible, because this is an area, there's a very big knowledge gap. So really great point. So we've got about 8 minutes left. I want to squeeze one more question in and then just take any kind of final thoughts. I know there's so much information to cover here today. There's no way we would have answered every single nuanced question here. We're going to do our best to provide a lot of resources for people so that they can answer those questions on their own. So let me just take one more question here. Let's see. So what about one aspect of technology abuse that we really didn't talk too much about is kind of those, well, we talked about how to maybe find secret apps, things like that, but what about those who have others somehow attach their phone? So the specific person said they had a survivor tell me that she believed even that someone would be mirroring her screen or somehow blocking her phone calls when she tried to make them. So I think that's like stalkerware, right? Those are kind of some situations where people have actually downloaded software, right? Am I using the right terminology there, or is there another way to look at those kinds of technologies?
Well, I would say, yes, stalkerware might be at play, but again, it's more. I think for those of us doing this work, the most sophisticated thing is likely not what's causing the problem, right? Mm-hmm. So I forget who mentioned it earlier. Who, maybe it was, I forget who it was who said they share an Apple ID, right? So text messages mirror on a partner's device, or you can go to your cellular provider and set up mirroring on devices. So because as convenient, I want my calls to ring on this phone, this tablet, and this thing, which is great, but when misused in an abuse dynamic in a family, can be really harmful. But that's not super sophisticated stuff. That's really, or it's usually something, I think, very, make sure your passwords are updated, make sure they're not logging into your accounts. People tend to, in my experience, lean towards, oh, it's this listening device or a spy cam or stalkerware or something like that, when in fact it's usually something much more benign and easily remedied.
Really, yeah, I think really great point. You kind of touched on that earlier, just this idea. It's likely not some CIA level, technology that your abusers somehow gotten their hand on, that the U.S. government secrets, all these kind of really deep, dark things. It's likely the fact that you could probably just change your password and make that go away. So thanks for that. And Sheri, I saw you perk up there.
Yeah, one of the things that I didn't even realize, so a few years ago, I bought a car. It was a used car, but still a fairly new car. And I got an email a few weeks later from the salesman saying, oh, don't forget to register your car app. All you need is your VIN number. And so I was like, what? And so I just went ahead and registered to see what it looked like. And all of my details of where I had been were listed on that app. And all I needed was the VIN number to register the app. Needless to say, I'm not a fan of that, but most people don't know. And it isn't a fancy car. I mean, I drive a pretty normal car, but I was shocked. And I thought, holy mackerel, the ramifications of this, if someone else registers that car and you don't even know about the app and you're driving and everywhere you go, they know, that's stalkerware without being stalkerware, but it's not stalkerware that is stalkerware. So it's just, you really have to be, on star too. Crazy, right?
Yeah, no, that's really important to share. And want to give everyone about a minute or so, just any final thoughts, anything that you would hope to, mention in this chat today that we didn't get to. Kara, go to you first. Is there anything that's on your notes that you're like, oh, we didn't get to go to this, or anything you want to kind of close with?
Yeah, I mean, I'll get to most of it and in the after with the demo, but with the stalkerware thing, we actually built in a feature so that it will notify a user that even though they're in this secure browsing space, that they could potentially be tracked by stalkerware if their phone is jailbroken or stalkerware is installed. So we built in that warning so that individuals would know, because people don't know how to look for that. And so anything that we can do on the tech side to bring that to the forefront, to make it easier to be known, are the things that we consider.
Yeah. Sheri, anything else you'd like to add?
We've talked about a lot of kind of frightening stuff, scary stuff. We've given a lot of resources, but I think what's really important to know is there are a ton of resources out there to make you safe. And it sounds like Ashley's going to be reaching back out to all of us to put together a comprehensive list of these types of resources. It's not rocket science, but it is time consuming. Being diligent in any form or fashion is time consuming. And you just need to find the right resource, find the right person that will help you through something that can seem overwhelming. But once you lock it in place, you're going to feel much better. So don't give up hope. There's lots of resources out there. And all of us here are willing to help. We're doing what we can to help.
Yeah, thank you. Hilary, anything to wrap up with?
Yes, I would just say, just thinking about what Sheri was just saying about the car information is something that you can do just to see what of your information is out there that you didn't know was out there. There are free dark web scanning tools that you can use on the internet to see what of your information is available on the dark web. And then there are also things called data broker opt-out tools that allow you to contact a company that is collecting your data. And you can ask them to delete it and not sell it. So again, I think just taking the time to kind of Google, how do I address this problem? And usually there's someone out there with an answer.
Thank you. And Adam, we'll end with you. Any final words you'd like to share with our audience?
At the end of the day, like we've talked about a lot, we've covered a lot of ground here. at the end of the day, and I included some information on this in the chat. Maybe I'll repost it in there, but like, look at your, like, the email accounts you're using, updating passwords. Like, there's VPNs and all these different things are great tools, but probably not like the top thing. Like, the average domestic violence perpetrator does not know how to use shared access to a Wi-Fi network to spy on a victim. Like, that is not something. They're more likely to just go to the computer and look at your search history, right? So I wouldn't, and it can have an unintended consequence of overwhelming survivors if you start talking about things that they hadn't even considered. So I would always focus on the basics, which is cybersecurity experts will say, like, make whatever accounts you use most, social media, email, update those accounts, use two-factor authentication, update your passwords, like, focus there first. And then if there are ancillary things you need to deal with, go ahead and do that. But that's it. Just keep it simple in the beginning, right? And I put my email and and even a link to a free webinar we offered last week with some experts about Wi-Fi and home safety. So if that's helpful, I threw it out there as well. But that's what I would say. Focus on the basics, because most folks victims and survivors don't even know the basics. And so that's where you can really provide value and, frankly, address most of the problems.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. Thank you, Adam, Kara, Hilary, and Sheri for joining us today. And thank you to all everyone who's attended. We are going to stick around, just Kara and Rachel and I are going to stick around. Kara's going to go in a little bit more about OhanaLink Purple, do a little bit of an overview of that. But just one quick reminder before we do that, we are recording this, so we'll have a transcript, certificate of attendance, and then we're going to collect as many of the resources as we can that were mentioned today in a document and share that with everyone within a week of the presentation. Let's see, we have a few people that are just calling in. So if you're have dialed in today, you're not on your computer listening in, please send us email to info@domesticshelters.org so we have your email address. But with that, we'll go ahead and conclude this portion. So thanks again for attending. All right. Bye-bye. All right, yes. Adam and Sheri, you're welcome to stick around to see the demo, but we'll continue on.
Thank you so much. I gotta run.
Thank
Bye.
you.
All right, thanks for your time. Appreciate it. All right, Kara, you're on. Oh, we got your muted right there. No worries.
Just wanted to make sure that I can have the screen sharing capabilities.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We did
not.
not.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, let me get that going for you. Okay, you should be good to go.
All right, great. Thank you. Okay. Hopefully you can see this now. Yeah.
Yeah, you can see your
Okay.
slides.
So OhanaLink Purple was, as I mentioned earlier, we launched in June of this year after collaborating with 7 agencies in Western Pennsylvania. And so we are a woman-owned, woman-led tech company out of Western Pennsylvania. We started in the healthcare space, delivering secure, private mobile apps for family and friends to connect during health-related events. But what happened was during COVID, our local domestic violence agency saw what we were doing in the healthcare space and said that, we really need help connecting with our clients. Their phones essentially stopped ringing. Victims are now at home with their abusers and who are working from home. And how can we provide a safe connection to services to the clients? And so that was really what we would set out on our journey to create this solution. Our first focus was on access. How can we give access to clients without having to tie them to an email address, a phone number, or something that's tying them to a single device? Phones get smashed, phone numbers change. How can we remain this or keep this connection going so that we can wrap our arms around these clients and help them navigate their way through this process of leaving or fixing a situation? And so we created a new way to have clients engage with their service providers through a secure wrapper. So what we wanted to do was not just create an access point for, that looked like something that was, a calculator. There's a lot of calculator type apps out there that have hidden resources, newspaper apps, and so on. But we took it one step further and made our library of solutions fully functional, so that if it's a game, if it's a news app, or whatever the case is, that it is fully functional, that if an abuser does find it downloaded on a device, that it fully functions, and that the component that's connecting the client to the agency is clandestine. So we accomplished that. And then next was enhancing the communication. So making sure that clients that did not necessarily have access to a data plan, that could only access Wi-Fi, maybe if they're at a McDonald's or out and about, that they would be able to have access to communications and services. So this isn't just an app that's connecting a client or a victim survivor to a list of resources. We're connecting them to a human on the other end, and the advocates and these agencies being those humans on the other side. And so really building that community around a client in an undetectable manner. So aiding in the connectivity, enhancing the support through family members. Safe family members can be brought into this ecosystem to support a survivor. My sister's a survivor. It was important for me to make sure, maybe selfish a little bit, to make sure that others could be brought in to support and engage privately and securely through this ecosystem. This also provides a single source of truth and a single access point for any brochures that you would typically hand to a client, any phone numbers, or a directory of services that you would typically refer a client to is accessible under a secure browser in OhanaLink Purple. So giving them access to the resources and the tools that they need to plan what's next for them. Improving the communication. So that what we have here now is an asynchronous communication component. So what we do is we enable clients to respond to you when it's safe for them to do so. And you can reach out to them, sending them a message or a voice memo when it's convenient for you to do so. So looking at those operational efficiencies as well, not having to see, is it a safe time to call this client? Instead, now you can send a voice memo, you can send a text message under the secure wrapper, which notifies the client that they have something to see, but it does it in a clandestine manner, so that it's not indicating that they have a message to see. So it comes from a game app or some other type of cover. We do not integrate with any data tracking or, like ETO systems, because we don't share data, we don't sell data, we don't want data, we don't look at data, and we are finalizing end-to-end encryption so that we don't even have the data if we're subpoenaed for such. So we're taking those measures to make sure that this truly is a lockdown place for victims to receive access to critical services that they need. In addition to that, expanding the opportunities and the offerings for services that agencies can provide. So enabling agencies to now deliver services safely, securely, privately, secretly through just a mobile device. So even the agency providers do not necessarily need to have individual cell phones for every employee. As long as you have a Wi-Fi access, you can now interact and engage through any mobile device with your clients. So that is the brief overview of what OhanaLink Purple is. But I would like to, at this point, I'm going to actually share my mobile device and show you what this looks like from the agency side. The clients do have a separate access point, which, due to the publicity around this event, I will not be sharing, but I am very happy to offer a demo for your organizations individually to share that information with you. So I'm going to share my device now so you can see what it looks like from your access point. Okay. So from the agency side, the access point is called OhanaLink Direct Connect. We built OhanaLink Purple inside of Direct Connect so that we can expand the offerings of services. So not only are we offering OhanaLink Purple for victims of domestic violence, but also we'll be expanding into OhanaLink Teal for victims of SA and other comprehensive services as well, victim services as a whole. So OhanaLink Direct Connect is the access point for an agency provider. Agency providers create an account utilizing an email address and phone number. Your client users do not. They get an access code from you all to enter the system from their secure access point. It is as simple for them as downloading a mobile app, entering an access code and a PIN, and they are in. So it is very intuitive and simple to use. When we developed this solution, we wanted to make sure that it was so simple that even grandma could use it. So we kept that in mind as we worked through all of this. So when you download Direct Connect, you would have an empty lobby, which is where all of your client rooms live. So each client has their own room where they can interact and engage with you. So what does it look like to create a new client for this space? So this is my lobby. These are all of my clients here, and I can add a room. So say I have a new client coming in, I'm going to create a new room. So each agency is given a secure access code, so you have to be a client of ours and able to use the system. This unlocks the customizations associated with your organization. I cannot type. With your organization. Maybe. So I unlock it. I'm going to name it my client's name. And create the room. So what this is doing now is it's generating a space for this one client. You could bring multiple clients into one space if you wanted to have some sort of a support group, but this is creating a new space for this client. It's going to ask me at this point if I need to create a user ID for this client. Since this client is new, I'm going to say yes. And it is as simple as entering their name. Their display name is how they are going to be shown in the chat or the member list. So maybe I just want them to have their first and their last initial. And it creates a unique ID code for my client. So you would give this ID code to the client, and that is all they need now to access their system that's connecting them to you. I hit done. And then there's the communication features are right here. So you'll see this megaphone. This is where I can send my client a message that's going to push a notification to them, letting them know that I'm trying to reach them. So it can say, actually, let me go into a room that has some data in it so you can see what it looks like. So if I go in here, I have a message out to my client. There's some feedback here associated with my message, so I can see that it's been viewed by my client as well, just by clicking on it. You can see that she's viewed it. It will nudge them. Maybe I want to know, what time is safe to call, or to have a chat. So we can also go into chat back and forth, voice memo back and forth, so you can sort of like walkie-talkie it with your client rather than having a call that's logging on your device. We are working on the voice over IP so that you will be able to have those phone calls under this wrapper. That should be launching by the end of the year. You could bring in multiple individuals into this space. So again, that collaboration of support around this client. So I might be this client's advocate, but there's 3 others that work here that might be engaging this client as well. You would just go to this member list and you can add other members to the room. The access to resources here. So if I click on that, it does show brochures. So all of the brochures or handouts or a handbook that you would typically give to your clients, we digitize them all here so that they can freely browse. This purple banner indicates that your client is in a secure browser, not leaving any history, cookies, trace, nothing on their device. So if they back out of the app on their side, it does swipe right back to the game. So once they can swipe out of this, swipe left, right, your phone goes to sleep, always reverts back to the game. So there's nothing left on the device indicating that they have been communicating at all, that clandestine component. So the chat, you can have an individual chat as well. So there's multiple people in here, and I just want to have a one-on-one chat with somebody. You are able to do that as well. The directory of services here. So we do customize this per location based on partners that you would typically refer your clients to. So I can go into children's services here. I can see all of the services available in that category. And again, I'm securely browsing these resources. So it's empowering these clients now to have access to safe communication, safe connectivity to not only you all, but to other resources as well. And so these phone numbers, when the voice over IP is complete, like again, by the end of this year, we'll be able to click on a phone number, make that phone call right from underneath the wrapper, and it would not leave a trace or a call log or a history on a phone bill, nothing that could be seen. So that feature is coming. And again, earlier I mentioned some of the operational efficiencies that we're focusing on. And one of the important ones that came up through our advisory committee, which is made up of advisors who are advocates, is the document signing. So in-app document signing is coming. The ability to get a release form signed off on, the client would just sign off with their finger and generate a PDF, which would be then sent to you all. So the in-app document signing is coming as well. There's a planner feature in here that enables you to set appointments or meetings that the clients can come into, and there's meeting details. They do have the ability on the client side to decline a meeting if they're unavailable. But again, really keeping them in this single location for all of their needs, including meetings. You know, you don't want to be putting meetings out on a Google Calendar that could potentially be attached to another device. So this single source of truth, the to-do list. So you can create to-do lists for your clients if they need to gather belongings or important documents, things that they need to think about to safety plan. These things can all be generated right under this wrapper as well. And then you do have the ability, I know we talked in the previous session about secure browsing. So you do have the ability here to hit this plus sign, and you could link your clients to any URL that would, potentially be a good resource for this client, maybe a jot form or document that you would need to link to that's a URL, and your clients can then access that URL. I'll show you here, this one down here, I actually pre-generated, which links to, I believe this might be NNEDV, a website with resources, and your client can freely browse this. This is a secure browser. I know there was a lot of DuckDuckGo talk in there, but this is just a unique browser that is built within our solution that, again, this purple banner indicates that they're secure and safe in here, and that no history trace cookies are being left out on their devices. So I think lastly on this is the agency side again. So this I button up here is an information button that allows you to put in some client information that either helps you remember who this client is, or if you have other admins in this room, advocates that you brought in to help with this communication with this client, something that indicates that who this client is. And maybe you don't want the client to have to repeat themselves over and over again. And so that is what this client info button is for, and not visible by the client. And lastly is this little clipboard here, which is, we found that it's being used in several ways. One is about me. So maybe inviting your client to tell them a little bit about tell them a little bit about themselves, giving them a little bit of control here in their profile. But others are using it to kind of set boundaries. So you do in your member list have the ability to turn your little green light off and on, indicating whether or not you are available. And again, this is not to be confused with some emergency service or some crisis service, but really enabling that asynchronous communication, the ability for the client to build that relationship with their advocate who, might not be available during the time that it's safe for me as a client to reach out. So really enhancing that engagement between what it means to engage a shelter or a service provider and extending that to this asynchronous component through a secure mobile application. And so that is the client side, or I'm sorry, the agency side overview. I would love to show you the client side. It is magical. So I encourage you to, I know that Ashley's probably going to share a link that you can schedule a demo to see that side. It takes us about 10-15 minutes. Invite your teams, invite your boards. We would love to share it with you all, but just due to the publicity surrounding this amazing platform, we are just not going to share that here. So I'm happy to answer any questions at this time as well.
Yeah, I'm looking here in the chat. Give everyone some time. If there's any questions that you have about the technology, I'm going to pull that link up and make sure we have that in the chat as well, so we can, if anybody wants to schedule a demo.
I see someone asked, how is this accessed and used by survivors? So they do have to have a connection point at an agency or service provider to get the unique ID code to get access to this. We currently are looking at ways to engage allies, hospitals or other access points, that police that might be able to connect them. But really, we're doing the work on our side as well to work with our clients to, we put a package together that allows or that enables you to know how to communicate that you're offering this new service to clients, to victims in your area. So we're working on all of those tools so that you can have this other, solution in your back pocket to be able to extend your services.
Wonderful. And I'm going to drop in also just your landing page so people can go browse that as well.
Thank you.
Let's see. Are you able to speak with to the cost of it, or is that something you'd like to talk more about in a demo setting?
Yeah, no, that's fine. So we have pretty standard pricing right now. As I said, we launched in June. So we have introductory pricing. It's around $349 a month per location. However, we are looking at opportunities to offer discounts for coalitions or larger groups that would want to onboard together. So we're always open to discussion around that. But that's really just to give you an idea of where that price starts. It is something that we've made open to unlimited clients. So you can help unlimited amount of clients under one price point, as well as unlimited users within your organization as well. So none of that is restricted.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for sharing all that information. We will include, of course, in the shared resources links, we'll include your email address so people want to reach out, and that link to schedule a demo. So if anyone has any more questions, they'll be able to get in touch with Kara or someone on their team directly. Anything else that you wanted to add about OhanaLink Purple?
Well, I just saw one more question that said,
good.
are agencies using this? And yes, we have 17 either onboarded or in the process of onboarding. So we're in our very early days of rolling it out. The feedback has been absolutely incredible. One of the key highlights here is, simple to use. And so although it's safe, secure, it is simple. So I do encourage you to see that. The client side, it is magic, and can't wait to share it with you all.
Fantastic. Oh, is this in any other languages?
Yeah, so we do have the ability for any language. We have internationalization. We are finalizing our Spanish translations as we speak. And so that is going to be available here within the very short term, meaning like ASAP. But yeah, we have the ability to translate to any language that is needed.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I agree, Dawn. Very exciting stuff. And that's one of the reasons why when Kara and Lisa on her team reached out to us to share more about this technology, we were, over the moon about it. So thank you so much for pivoting your company this way, because I know this isn't how you started your journey in technology, but so appreciative of the work that you put into this. I do see one more comment coming in. Oh, so Kara did mention that it is unlimited. So for the $349 a month fee. Yeah, there's no limit to how many staff or clients can use it, right?
That's right. Yep.
Okay. Got it.
Yes, in
Yeah.
Canada, it is something we could work with. Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, that's a big question we get for any technology we introduce is
Yeah.
our friends in Canada as well. And is data being gathered about how much happens? I'm not sure specifically, but it sounds as though there's you don't work in the data brokering field.
We do
right?
not broker data. So there is very limited access on our side. So we can see, if how many user IDs you're creating on your side. We don't have access to the client names. We do have access to client ID codes that you create only because if there's an account issue that you would need to help your client with, that we would be able to help with that. But we're not sourcing any of this data and using it for anything. We don't want it. So keeping it as minimal as we can.
Fantastic. Yeah, I see some Canadians as well being happy to be able to access that. So
yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
Awesome. We'll pause just for one more breath, see if anything else comes in. Okay. All right. We'll leave it at that then. Kara, thank you so much for sticking around and for obviously
Thanks,
just being the
Ashley.
panel as well. Always great to get to spend time with you. And thank you to everyone who stuck around. We have over 250 people stuck around to hear more about it. So that's just more testament to what you're doing and how it really aligns with the needs of domestic violence professionals. So with that, we'll go ahead and conclude today's webinar, and everyone have a fantastic day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.